problem getting our papers anywhere in a timely fashion. In fact, our December, our last issue of the year is still showing up 3 months later,
Yep.
to folks.
I think we all have those stories.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunately the Richmond plant right now has about the worst numbers of any plant in the country. It's sort of a dirty little secret in the Postal Service that Richmond is a mess. Part of it is because they had a lot of people out with COVID. They had real staffing issues. And I think a lot of the plants are back up to staff. The problem is it's kind of like when you have an accident on the interstate, they'll clear the accident, but there might be a slowdown there for hours afterwards that just takes a long time to work its way through. I guess that's the closest analogy I have. In fact, I have a list of subscribers on my desk right now that I am making phone calls to because I'm trying to determine if there are any clusters of really bad delivery problems, mostly in Northern Virginia. There's not a lot we can do about the out-of-county, the out-of-town deliveries, other than just keep squawking, and we are. The last two mailers technical advisory committees meetings I've been to, there hasn't been much of a program because all of the mailers have basically been just telling the Postal Service, their horror stories and not getting a lot of response. For your in-county, I'm sure you're all doing this, but if you're not using what's called exceptional dispatch and delivering to your local post offices, and in your case, you can deliver to Bath County too. It's a bit of a pain and it costs some money, but it's about the only way you can really ensure that at least the people getting papers out of those post offices are getting them in a timely manner. We've been going to Stanton weekly for quite a while now. We worked a deal with the Stanton postmaster, and Ann, you might talk to him also. Taking papers not just for Stanton, but for most of the 244 zips in Augusta County, and they're serving them out of Stanton, and instead of it going to Richmond and taking God knows how long, we're dropping them on Wednesday and people are getting them on Thursday. And any kind of little side deals you can work with the postmaster that you have a relationship with. I think as far as the Postal Service's guidelines on how you're supposed to use them, all bets are off. This is war, folks. You need to do everything you can do to try and make get your subscribers their papers. And frankly, we've been telling a lot of people who are having consistent poor service that, unfortunately, electronic e-subscriptions are the only way that they're really going to get it promptly. We all have the people who swear up and down, I don't want to read it on the computer. A lot of them, once they try it, they find it's not as bad as they think it is. We used to have a subscriber, she's passed away, but she was down in Temple, Texas, and she lived in Lexington, moved away years ago. She was like 95, and she got it every week on her computer, and she just loved it. But she would call us up when she got her invoice, and she would say, I don't do those credit cards, and I don't do online payments. Can I just send you a check? And we say, yeah, sure, that's fine. So the distant subscribers problem is I don't have a solution to it. The Postmaster General has proposed a new quote, delivering for the future, delivering for tomorrow, whatever that he calls it, where they're going to reduce the delivery standards. They're going to cut the first class standards or they're going to increase them by a day. And periodicals essentially move in the same mail stream as first class. And, NNA's first reaction was, hell no, you're not delivering to the standard now. Why should we, let you try and fix it just by changing the rules and moving the goalposts? But we've sort of made a little bit of a switch in saying, okay, we can live with these standards if you can consistently meet them. Well, haven't really met them, before the pandemic, real well, but it wasn't terrible, and at least there was some consistency, even if it wasn't really rapid service.
Yeah, Matt, you brought a good point, and in terms of COVID and electronic delivery, I don't know how things are down in Lexington or in your area, but are y'all finding, any of the papers really on the call, are y'all finding increase in electronic subscribers like the New York Times and the Washington Post and folks are? Anybody?
We did, yes, at Fuck Your Times, we absolutely did, especially during the pandemic. More people, were at home. And so our visibility on our websites went from 450,000 from the previous summer to 3.2 million. And I'm sure,
Wow.
Yeah, it was insane. And I'm sure that's just everybody passing through and trying to get as much information as possible. If I could back up for a second and add to what Matt was talking about, we are exceptional dispatch too. And what I found to be helpful is to stay on the local postmasters and make sure you have a good relationship with them and their delivery people. And every now and then we have to go and visit one of them and just say, what can we do? Are we here on time? And just shake their hand and thank them for the work that they are doing. And that has helped a lot. But the reconfiguration makes no sense. I have complaints about Prince William, but if you live in Prince William, you may get your paper, a week late, 2 weeks late, but the subscribers in Fauquier who subscribe to Prince William get their paper on time. Now, if you think about that, how messed up is that? It's not making any sense. And, of course, they made all those changes and we have to go through Dulles for, they shut down a couple of hubs here and you're just staying on top of it. It's just staying on top of it. I can't emphasize it enough. But yet they're migrating. We did a circulation push, a subscription drive, and that went really, really well. And most of them, we allowed to have a web-only subscription rate, and that's helped immensely.
In your county, Catherine, y'all have pretty good internet in some of the parts and not so great in other parts.
Yeah, not where I live.
Oh, right. So in the parts you don't, but in some parts you do. So I think it's the same for most all of us.
Yeah.
Those of us on the call. Are you finding that impacts it much at all? People taking electronic subscriptions, they can't get on, they can't connect to the interwebs, or their phones aren't good enough, or things like that. Does that bother the numbers at all, you think?
Does it bother the numbers at all?
You're seeing good growth anyway.
Yeah, a good growth anyway in Prince William specifically. We had a very successul drive, and I think that's because they are connected in Prince William. You have connectivity almost everywhere. Of course, here, like in Warrenton, we have great connectivity, but if you go to the Plains, maybe not so much, and so it's intermittent. But what we saw was the thirst of local reporting was great during the last year. And so we went to what we called news only. We eliminated our lifestyle, we eliminated our sports, we eliminated our business, and we went to news only content, which kept the cost of the paper down while we were losing revenue at 40 to 50%. So we were able to level that out. We found that was a winning formula during the pandemic. Just people, 28 pages of just local news and updates. And it was really important at the time. We were still attending meetings virtually and doing our job. So I think what's going on now is, again, kind of people are getting more comfortable going online. Like the 90-year-old person who went online, I think that because they were home, these elder seniors were at home, and had to communicate in some kind of way. They got more familiar with FaceTime, families were Zooming, I think that helped go a long way. Does that make sense? So they're all at home, and if they were uncomfortable with technology, they got comfortable relatively easy, because they needed that form of communication, because there was no other. You couldn't visit, right?
Yeah.
So that's my thinking.
They have to do it anyway. Yeah. So that's good that the digital is picking up like a success. Mr. Stewart, I know you've talked about successes and things that have changed this year compared to last year, and strong points and things we know now that we didn't know then, and that sort of thing. You mind speaking a little bit to some of the successes that y'all have seen in your papers?
Yeah, absolutely. We too are seeing a real increase in the comfort level that readers have with digital for many of the reasons Catherine stated. Not unusual for a senior citizen reader to come in the front door of the newspaper, tablet in hand, and say, show me how to call up the newspaper on this. And we take the 5 to 10 minutes to do that and have a great visit. They enjoy the socialization, but that has been a real change in the last 12 months, is that increasing comfort level. Another dynamic that I think is driving some success with digitally subscriptions, e-editions, et cetera, many communities have had to eliminate curbside pickup, recycling pickup of newsprint because they have nowhere to take it. And we're seeing environmentally conscious readers say, we want to go all digital. I really don't mind it. I guess the downside would be long-term, of course, preprint revenue, because I think while we're all willing to put our preprints in our e-editions, our customers aren't willing to pay us for that method of preprint distribution. So we just do it complimentary, more for readers than for the advertiser. But we do use it during rate negotiations to say to advertisers, we're including preprints in the e-edition. So I think it's generally a healthy trend. Most places we doubled or more digital subscriptions during COVID.
Nice.
Digital subscriptions.
Yeah.
Now, we were aggressive in reducing print frequency in places that had daily, and I define daily as 5 times or more a week. We, at the outbreak of COVID, reduced print frequency to twice a week in most places, 3 times in other places. That really gave us incentive to emphasize digital readership. We got really committed to email newsletters, sometimes more than once a day, sending out headline newsletters, and those got tremendous engagement in audience during COVID. And as the audience for them grew, a nice little advertising stream. We had businesses, calling us, like, how do I get an ad on your newsletter? And it's really become a nice source of revenue. Not huge, but certainly covers, the little bit of labor involved in putting together headlines newsletter.
Yeah, now, Chad, you guys have had, like Mr. Stewart talked about, the newsletters. I know y'all have had a lot of success over the years with magazines as much as anything. Have you guys put out, I'm assuming that you have put out special publications, special sections, special magazines and things like that over the last year and a half that have been successful for you?
We have, Steve, and it's been obviously a difficult year on every level. Your special publications magazine level was one of the more challenging things we had to deal with, because a lot of our for the free publications, a lot of our distribution points were closed. And we had to dial back on the frequency of some of our publications and do some different things distribution wise. We went to, for some of our more successful publications, such as a real estate publication that we do monthly, we went to home delivery that we did ourselves as staffs. Everyone at the corporate office, everyone at the newspaper, we ordered bags, frankly, for the magazines. And when they came in, we unboxed them, we bagged them ourselves, we put them in our cars, and we went around and put them in driveways so people wouldn't have to go out during COVID to pick their magazines up. This actually led to an increase in sales for the publications we did that for, once word got out that we were doing it and we were actually doing the home delivery. We had a grand total of 2 problems with someone that called and said, hey, it's COVID, and I really am not crazy about somebody throwing something in my driveway during COVID. 2 people versus thousands of people who were thrilled with it. And the bottom line, as we all on this call know, speaks the best. Sales went up. Another thing that went really well during this period of COVID for us was frankly our health coverage and health coverage sponsorships, both in print and digitally. We have an older readership, as most of us do. Health was the ultimate challenge for everybody to get information on. They wanted to stay current with it. We really beefed it up online and in print, and the results for that were good as well. And the most gratifying thing was getting the information out to people whose lives were literally on the line, our older readers. And in a way, this last year, the period of COVID, as challenging as it's been, I honestly think, and I hope this is the case for many of us on this call today and the ones that'll be watching it later, it drew us closer to our own readerships in a way that I haven't experienced in 20 years. And I believe in some of our markets, I'd like to believe, based on the feedback that I've personally gotten and anecdotes that I could personally give you of things I've experienced myself helping my staff do it, we actually, I believe it drew us closer together, and they see now the critical role a little clearer that we play in their lives. And that's been good. There hasn't been a lot of good, but those things that I just talked about, I think were very good.
Yeah, well, that seems like the sort of connection that you can carry forward, that we've got in, I guess we're calling it the after times. But, so we're pushing that sort of connection forward. But we have a question that ties into this from the gallery. Do people plan to market digitally heavily after COVID ends? So what sorts of things, like digital, for example, are you going to carry forward into the after times? And anybody who's chimed in, please feel free to. Chad Adams, if you're, Smith Mountain, if you're down there, Bonnie, anybody, please feel free to chime in, but I'll just throw it just so we got somebody. Ann, if you could start, are you guys doing anything that you've done that you're going to carry forward after COVID, particularly, marketing digital, but really anything else?
That's a great question. One of the things that was very useful to us was just drop into a little 1/8 of a page. We just cut the rate. And we asked our readers to sponsor their favorite businesses and pay for the advertising for them. Restaurants that were, any of these small businesses that were struggling, and they were all of them. So people would, give us $100 and say, please run 4 ads for the library or this restaurant or whatever. And that works so well that we just continue to do it because it makes the businesses feel good. My ad salesperson loves it. She gets to call people up and say, hey, somebody's paid for your ad. What would you like to put in it this week?
That's a terrific idea.
Yeah, it's really worked well.
We instituted what we call a business relief program, that where we would match dollar for dollar what the advertiser could spend, which meant we had, it really was so well received because everybody knew that they had to get back in the game but could ill afford to with, because there was still so much uncertainty. But because we implemented that early on, they started to come back sooner. And we would often use that dollar for dollar to try different things for them. So if they were only a print advertiser, we'd say, let's use some of that money that we're matching and put you in the newsletter, put you in online, on web, and we would do a combination of media mix for them. And when they realized the numbers that were so strong, especially during a 6-month period where it seemed like everybody and their brother was reading us, they started to get a lot of chatter that was positive for them. So we continue with the business relief program, and it's helped small businesses. A little flower shop, sells out of her plants on a regular basis. And so again, it's that bunker mentality with the community, right? Is that we're in this together, and we're going to get through this together. And it's really worked for us in a profound way. And, it just shows the partnership, that we have to get back into, profitability too, with the severe cuts that we incurred. But it is coming back so nicely that it feels sustainable, which I wouldn't have said that 8 months ago. I would go, no, all bets are off. We have no idea what we're navigating. But it seems to be working very nicely. And, we're supposed to have a great 3rd and 4th quarter. So I encourage everybody to get everything ready, because I think it's going to get easier. I don't want to say that too loud, but I think it's going to get easier as people feel more confident that their businesses can get back in, solid footing. That's my thought on it.
I think everybody is looking forward to being better.
Yes.
Right? We're still full of hope. But, we did have that big stretch, and I don't know how much of that, talk about carrying things forward, about meetings like this, Zoom meetings for public officials, town councils, school boards, having their meetings over Zoom. So I think, Ann, you had asked about this earlier in some of the offline kind of discussions. So are y'all seeing kind of that going forward? Have you been fighting against that in terms of access over the past year? Have you had any successes in that? So just, if anybody wants to chime in, what's going on with the open meetings over Zoom that the public bodies seem to be having?
Ours are still, or at least our Lexington City Council is still meeting by Zoom. And their public hearings, we had some issues with the way they were doing their public hearings. They didn't publish the Zoom link, fearing that they would get Zoom bombed. And so if you wanted to comment or even attend the public hearing, you had to call the city manager's office and get and they would send you the code, which we felt like was a not in the spirit of open government. They had the reasons.
Did y'all do anything about that? Are they still doing that sort of thing?
No, they actually are doing them in open meetings now.
Oh, in person?
Yeah, I know the county is. My dad went and spoke at one of them last week. But we have an election city council meeting tonight that's on Zoom. The next one will be in June, and I'm curious with the changes whether they'll go back to the in-person meetings starting 1st of June. Mr.
Stewart, Farmville, Suffolk, how are they? Tidewater area, how are the meetings there?
It's a mix, and I found the whole live stream meetings thing to be bittersweet. Some advantages certainly for us as journalists. Very small newspapers, 1 or 2 reporters who can't possibly get to all meetings have become more productive, because you have the option to watch it after the fact even. So if you got 2 meetings going on at the same time. And so in that sense, I think our access, if you will, to government decision making has improved, just because we can better manage it digitally than we could in person. Now, what we're seeing in a lot of communities is, during the citizen comment period, public hearings, to Matt's point, not giving the public an opportunity to speak directly to the elected body. We've had some that are saying you can submit your comments in advance and we will read them aloud. I don't like that. I think even if it's a virtual session, taxpayers need to be able to look their elected officials in the eye and speak and be heard. But submitted written comments are not enough.
Yeah, let me ask, after the meeting, after the fact, do y'all at the papers, do you have access to all of the questions that were submitted?
Yes, but usually have to ask for it. And, so I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Other areas, Zoom, open meetings, public meetings?
Steve, most of our markets have opened up back to in-person meetings. There are continuing in most localities, the availability of the Zoom, but it's not just the Zoom. I do feel like it's high time to get back in those meetings as journalists, as tough as it is, because it's impossible to do what we need to do with the follow-up and getting the full picture when you're not there in the building. So yeah, that's something I agree with Steve Stewart. We got to get back to that. And we are slowly, as quickly as we can, depending on the locations we are in the markets, but it is slowly getting back to normal.
Yeah, speaking of agreeing with Steve Stewart, Mr. Stewart, you mentioned that our reporters are being asked to cover a bunch of different meetings, and that's good that they can, have a town council and a board of supervisors and a school board and whatever else going, and they don't have to go back and forth. But also, I would imagine all of us, particularly staff members who are running around, salespeople, reporters who are being asked to do new things, the level of stress, after a year and a half-ish of this has been wearing on them. Are we looking towards some sort of a break? Have we learned as managers to make adjustments? What are we doing for our staffs at the various newspapers to kind of help them and us adjust to sort of the problems that we're seeing? Mr. Stewart, if you don't mind kicking us off on that one.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we all wrestle with that daily. One thing, and had a couple of specific personnel matters on my radar screen this week, as people got more comfortable working remotely, they want to continue to. And, I had one request from an ad rep this week and one from a journalist saying for family reasons, I would really like to continue working remotely as we've opened offices back up. In one case, not so good employee. And so I don't really, if I say, no, you can't do that, I'm not really concerned. If they want to leave, so be it. The other case, a very valued employee who I do not want to lose, and so this starts to get tricky for managers. Because the whole double standards thing, your HR professionals probably tell you can't do, can't let one person do it, not let the other person do it. So we're confronted with some questions there as we go forward. I by nature am a let's physically be together type leader. I want to see my people, look my people in the eye. I want to gather in the conference room. Especially with journalists, I love the value of collaboration, face-to-face, new staff meetings, et cetera, et cetera. But what does the workplace of the future look like? And if letting a talented person work remotely keeps them engaged and happy and productive, maybe we need to do it. I would love to hear other thoughts on that.
I have thoughts on it because I think about nothing else right now. And I think that kind of weaning them from working at home shouldn't be now you start to work full time, come in, 9 to 5 starting next Monday. It doesn't work. And it shouldn't work. but like you said, you have the combination of really great employees who can execute their jobs efficiently and brilliantly from their home site because their work ethic is sound, right? And so you don't worry about those employees. But unfortunately, I had this conversation yesterday with somebody that said, you know, I think we've been working remotely very well. And I go, we made it seem seamless, but it hasn't been. You know, there's latency in communication, there's latency in building, you know, pagination, there's latency in the back and forth combination of just proofing and editing the paper. So it's never been ideal, but we made it function. So my approach is going to be, and it has been, I follow all the guidelines, and I'm going to allow for a period of time, people who want to come back into the office can come back into the office if they would like. The people that are extremely necessary to be here, I would like them to come in on production day to eliminate the, you know, miscommunications, the back and forth that are unnecessary if you're sitting here, you know, with your designer and your paginator. So I think in the future, however, what I've come to realize is we don't need this office. You know, the bigger office. I think we're going to have a blend of administrators who have to answer the phone. You know, for instance, we had somebody working remotely answering the phone. The problem with that, she could only answer the phone one call at a time, which was not ideal. I mean, it worked, but it wasn't ideal because we'd have to do callbacks because people would say, I can never reach you. Well, she's on the phone. You're never going to reach her, you know, until it's your turn. So taking a look at that and saying, is there some combination of workforce? I think so. I think that if we can come up with a way that we can work remotely and in person, I'm amenable to that. You know, but again, it takes the work ethic. I am very fortunate that 100% of our employees were the caliber of people that could work remotely. You know, in the beginning, I had somebody who just decided it was a vacation. Pandemic was a vacation. And I'm just going to be at home because nobody's answering the phone and that, you know, pay me for that. And you can't have that. So I think we also learned how to work remotely together and just ironed it all out. So it's going to be some kind of combination for us.
Yeah, Kathy, can you talk about that for a second? The idea of collaborating remotely.
Mm-hmm.
In another session, we were talking about the value, you know, of handing sheets of paper to reporters and marking things up and seeing people face to face and that sort of stuff. Are y'all using, say, Google Docs? Are you using Zoom? How are you collaborating remotely? And as you go forward, you talked about kind of phasing some stuff in, weaning out. Are you going to keep doing some of that? But technically, how are you doing that?
We're not going to go back to printing out the paper and proofing it on hard copy ever. You know, that is gone. You know, I think we saved a million trees not doing that. You know, getting more comfortable with what's on screen is become a kind of common, and the ability to execute, you know, any proofreading changes or any editing changes in the 11th hour, easy now. And that's the part that does work, right?
Yeah.
And so we see that, and everybody can chime in. You know, we have, right before we go off the boards, everybody signs off on the pages. You know, so whether they're an advertising rep or they're an editor or I sign off on everything, we do it and it works really well.
Yeah, it seems like, you know, please everybody feel free to jump in. It seems like, you know, 2018, 2019, you know, everybody was kind of thinking, okay, how do we get more digital? How do we transition more? Are we sending laptops home? Are people having home offices? What are we doing technically? And then all of a sudden, March of last year hits and we have to make those changes. And so, you know, being forced into making that change, I think kind of pushed us all forward 10 years.
I agree.
Or whatever. So I think that, you know, going forward, we're certainly going to rely on following on that. It was a bit of a time warp. Mr. Stewart, Mr. Harrison, Ms. Adams, y'all seeing the same sorts of things?
Well, fortunately, in my case, we have been all working from home for a decade or more. for years. We were already in place at home and comfortable with digital proofing, and everything we do is online through Dropbox or shared. So we were all set when COVID hit. We were like, okay,
Wow.
not much of a change for us at all, except trying to keep the office, a little business office, open a couple days a week. That's all we did. So we've all been working from home for a long, long time, and it works just fine. And as you say, Catherine, it's really about the work ethic. It's
Yes.
about people.
You get the right people. I mean, we have such a solid team. Everybody knows what position they play, and they play it well.
Yeah.
And, the administrators that I miss so much is I didn't miss a day of work. I came in and I would be the only person in the office for almost 9 months, except with the exception of my editor and the reporter. And, there's still some tasks you have to do. You have to make the bank deposits. You have to run the invoices. You still have to have some kind of business office that's going to do all that transactional work. And we have a lot of transactional work. With circulation renewals, and we have 20,000 papers that we put out weekly. So, but I see a nice combination. But I'm comfortable because I have the right people, if that makes sense.
Same here. I feel very blessed with my staff.
Yeah, it's really good. It takes a while to get the right team, but once you do, you can knock it out of the park, like we did with the VPA awards. I was just throwing that in there.
And we as well used an all of the above approach to meet the needs of our companies, our profit centers, and our employees. And for the most part, it worked very well. The main concern we had was the health of our employees in a pandemic, while we're still trying to do an essential function that we were actually deemed as an essential function, rightly so, and not wanting to concede too much ground to our government bodies during this period while respecting everyone's health concerns. There's been a very delicate dance going on now for a year. And I think for the most part, everyone got through it okay because we all worked together, and there was kind of a spirit of cooperation in a way. I have seen, frankly, a little bit of ruffle feathers at a couple of our places with the local government, because we're now starting to be a lot more active. FOIA requests are going up. We're doing a lot more of investigation and follow-up stories. And I believe, not what I know, but what I think, a lot of our government bodies were we're really comfortable not having to deal with the public a lot during this period. And it's become an adjustment for them as well. I have personally seen some pushback on some very basic normal things pre-COVID that we're now beginning to do again, that is getting a little bit of a negative reaction, because it's just normal. So I'm curious to know if anyone else is experiencing that. It's not pronounced, it's not a huge thing, but it is something that I do see.
I haven't seen it, but we were just so, aggressive anyway during the pandemic. We were always trying to dig the dirt, and, so I'm not seeing that. My editor may feel a little bit differently, but I haven't really seen it.
All right, well, look, as we wrap up here, now's a good chance, if anybody has any questions to ask. I think particularly if anyone has any challenges going on right now at the time, any sort of difficulties, anything, we've got a pretty good brain trust here of leaders and publishers and editors and reporters, sales folks in the room now. So if anybody has any particular challenges, that we would discuss if we were all sitting together at lunch, please. I have
a big one.
Okay, bring it on.
So just when I thought it was safe to go back into the water, they are closing down Print Innovators where we print. And their solution is to move us to Lynchburg, which is 2.5 hours from our location, which is awful. And, we have 2 pub dates. We have a Wednesday pub date and a Thursday pub date. And so it's a huge challenge. And they always say nothing's going to change. Well, of course it's going to change. No, you're going to have 2.5 hour, where it used to be 1 for delivery costs. So, that's going to go up. And they keep talking about the sweet deal that Print Innovators had. So I'm looking for printers. I know we're in a kind of a limited market, but I've got to try to get creative. So if anybody knows, I've talked to a few people, Frederick in Maryland and a couple of other places, but if anybody can help me out there, please do.
Have you tried Keith Stickley? We were just talking about him in Woodstock. I don't know if he's much closer.
Who is it?
Narrow Passage Press.
Okay.
Near Winchester.
Near Winchester?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, that's not bad. That's probably only an hour and a half away.
Yeah, Catherine, I'm shooting you some information there in the chat window over on the side there.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Everybody feel my pain?
Absolutely. I'll jump in. We probably starting 15 years ago and for a solid decade, we were pretty aggressive about press closures. We simply did the math, and the adjacent metro daily, regional daily could print us at less than what it was costing us to print ourselves. And with all of the consolidation that has happened in the last 2 years, we've had to take a step back, and we're now choosing to leave presses operational even when there's some savings on paper. So this has become a security thing. There's no worse feeling than not having a way to get your newspaper printed, and the best security there is to have your own press. And so that's been a big shift for us in the last couple of years. And my concern is with the big handful of large presses that are left, they're doing so much work for their own papers, their own company, that they really don't have capacity for outside jobs and have little interest in small jobs. There's some big presses now that unless you have a 5,000 press run, they won't even talk to you. So
Right.
I think you've hit on a major issue in our industry, and those who still have their own press, my advice to you is to hold on to it.
Yeah.
Or if you outsource, don't dismantle your press. Leave it operational, pay somebody to come in once a month, turn the units, keep it ready to crank up, because there could be dire consequences if this press consolidation continues.
So this is a rumor, but I hear that the Washington Post may be investing in more commercial printing capacity because of the void that they see. There's still a lot of long tabs. We still have a lot of publications here in Virginia. And there's a rumor that they may have something approved, and that would be late summer. Now, I hope that's true to some degree, but I don't know what that means. And the person was unclear. But other than they were going to be able to take on more commercial press work because of bringing in different types of presses. So we'll see about that one. Everybody's thank you so much. This is so helpful.
Seeing a couple of questions in the chat room about where are their presses still running. I think Chad had to jump off. Womack is running a press in South Hill. Chad mentioned to me before we all jumped on that he's got some capacity there. I've got a press in Farmville, an hour or so from Richmond, with capacity. Not a lot of color capacities. If you have heavy color needs, we probably couldn't help you in Farmville, but we could help you with smaller runs that are not super color intensive there. So feel free to reach. Chad would be quick to give you a quote. And then Ann gave a good tip too on our friend Keith Stickley in Woodstock, who I think he does offer good color capacity.
Yeah, and Keith does from the northern neck to Richmond to, you know, I guess to Ann, Highland Bath County, that sort of thing. So there's a large stretch there too. That's you know, we're running out of time. I hope that has been helpful in terms of the printing. But certainly, you know, Steve Stewart at Suffolk, Chad down at Womack, Chad's at Chatham. You know, reach out to either one of those folks, or Keith Stickley, who I mentioned in the chat box, or, you know, call the VPA and we'll give you a list of folks as well. Any other quick questions before we all sign off and get back to the next session?
I want to mention a challenge.
Yeah.
Hi,
Chad.
So, how you doing? With Smith Mountain, Times, Virginia. One of the challenges I've seen, and I guess the company as a whole has seen, is the labor force and hiring drivers and other, you know, staff and stuff like that. So I just want to throw that out there and trying to figure out how we're going to tackle that.
Yeah, you guys use part-time contract labor for drivers or full-time folks or what?
We part-time. Also looking for freelancers, and that's been a little difficult as well. So for the labor market.
Yeah, no doubt. It's particularly in areas such as yours, you know. I would imagine my guess would be in kind of the Warrenton area, there's a different labor force than there is in Smith Mountain or Highland or, you know, some of the more rural-ish areas, I suppose. But if anybody has any ideas for freelancers, particularly drivers, I think, Chad? If you no answer, we have no answers for you, Chad.
Wish I had a magic pill. We're struggling as well with recruiting and retaining. Of course, we use only independent contractors because we try to stay out of the vehicle business and owning and maintaining vehicles.
Insurance.
We went to exceptional dispatch, and 1 week prior to the pandemic, believe it or not, we had 39 carriers, and we're down to 7 because they just delivered to the post office.
Yeah.
So 1 week prior, can you imagine?
I'll tell you what this does is it shows us a need for the Virginia Press Association to look into this for y'all and to come up with some solutions. So, you know, we'll work on that, to be honest with you.
Awesome.
And take a look at that. Drivers, freelancers, anything else? We got to close this down so we can get to the next one. But if you think of anything else, you know, concerns, that sort of thing that we can help with, I'll be glad to reach out to other folks on the panel. You can hit me at stevew@vpa.net, and I'll be glad to, you know, we'll work on whatever it is you need. Otherwise, I appreciate y'all stopping by and joining in. And at 1 o'clock, we have Regaining Readers' Trust with Les Zates. So I hope to see y'all in there at 1. That's going to be fantastic. We've got a big afternoon lined up for you. And this is going to be available to watch for the next few months at our site there where you got to this one. So everyone, particularly, you know, Catherine, Chad, Matt, Steve Stewart, Ann Adams for jumping in and chiming in with answers and questions. Appreciate it. And we will see y'all at the next thing.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Nice to have a great conversation.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Good to see everybody.
Bye, everybody.